So in terms of that then, Kathleen, how does a business identify the areas where systems can be made more efficient?
I always ask people to consider, and sometimes this can be under the radar, unbelievably, but what are your recurring hotspots? What's the drama? What do you always find yourself doing? Are you looking for lost paperwork? Are you cutting corners, running late? Are you not finishing what you start and constantly generating loose ends? If you're constantly leaving money on the table because you don't have a system for follow-up, that's like a systems development program.
Welcome to the Hands-On Business Podcast. Where else are you going to come to get tips, tricks, and advice on growing your business? As you know, what people tend to love about this podcast is that it is a place where you can hear real business leaders discussing systems, methodologies, and strategies that they have used to help them catapult growth in their business. So I'm your podcast host, Hakeem Adebiyi, and I've grown several small businesses to multi-million-pound enterprises and noticed that there wasn't really a place that focused on where I was, i.e. growing a small business. All of the content that seemed to be out there was about big business and often just a lot of theory and no practical implementable advice, which is exactly why I set up this podcast. So take a listen, enjoy, and start implementing the strategies that you hear on the podcast. Happy listening.
I was doing some mentoring with a commercial business leader the other day, and we were talking about the importance of systems, and we were discussing the important aspects of systems in all areas of business, and the fact that so many commercial leads don't seem to use robust systems or follow a process. Now, as you know, that's something that I could go on and on and on about, and I often have, because systems can help accelerate growth exponentially. So it's great to be able to be here and to be able to get a systems and efficiency specialist onto the show. So Kathleen Day, who runs several productivity workshops, such as high performance workspace, high efficiency systems, and high productivity schedule, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit more along the way. And today, what we're going to be talking about is unleashing business growth through efficient systems. So welcome, Kathleen. Delighted that you could join us on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to talk about this at length and go on and on at least a little bit with you.
Perfect. So we're both going to be very happy today because I think we both like systems and we like efficiency and we like productivity. So that's a match made in heaven. So I'm going to jump straight into it. Just give us a brief intro into what has brought you to being an efficiency expert. You know, how did that all start?
Well, I'm rebranding myself as the professional Virgo because I'm really embracing the lifelong habit of really pursuing workability, functionality, foundational elements that just make things go better. It's a passion and really started when I was in the second grade. My parents had this very thriving business that they ran out of the house. It was a plumbing and heating business. We had our office in the sunroom, the workshop downstairs, a 4-bay garage with all the trucks and equipment, workmen in and out every day. And my parents didn't really get along. So it was pure chaos. And when I learned to write and tell time, I wanted to help. So I call them my first clients. I started creating 48-hour schedules of childcare and household maintenance for them, which I'm sure they didn't really do too much with, but that certainly didn't stop me. So fast forward, I've always found in my work, whether it was in the job description or not, I was bringing order to chaos or just making whatever the process was in the company that I worked for more functional and seamless. So when everyone got laid off in 2009 and I had to figure out what the next thing was, I created a organizing company and eventually pointed myself towards small business, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, micropreneurs, small teams, and started to initiate all these custom systems because everyone Business models are different for each organization. So what I provide is not cookie cutter, but really a custom business model based approach to consolidating, planning, and implementing these. And it's systems across the board. So whether it's paperwork or client intake or placeholders in your schedule, those I consider all those to be a system that elevates performance and improves efficiency.
Okay, so on that point, because I always like to make sure that everybody is clear what we're talking about. So can you explain what efficiency means and efficient systems in the context of business growth?
Well, business growth requires, it's got a lot of moving parts. And often founders or CEOs or, whoever's swept up into the vortex of growth with them, it requires planning, clear goals, milestones, often a lot of precision and experimentation. So marketing, finance management, all these elements have to dovetail for growth. And that's really hard to do when you're compromised, whether it be by clutter, chronic overbooking, missing systems, or going along in cacophony, what I call cacophony mode, where there is a lot to do, you are getting a lot done, but it's not like coordinated and you can't really pinpoint where you are in a given process. So for business growth to be, let's say, easier, more seamless, you've got to have that foundation of resources, daily operations, your schedule, your workspace, your team, your standard operating procedures. If they're not in place, trying to get things done on top of that is very, very difficult and can really contribute to failure of growth. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yep.
I think you said it earlier. Efficiency is about making order out of chaos. I think is how you described it. Because if you're in a chaotic situation, you may be doing okay, but ordering that chaos is always going to lead to better business outcomes, I would suggest. So in terms of that, then, Kathleen, how does a business identify the areas where systems can be made more efficient?
I always ask people to consider, and sometimes this can be under the radar, unbelievably, but what are your recurring hotspots? What's the drama? What do you always find yourself doing? Are you looking for lost paperwork? Are you cutting corners, running late? Are you not finishing what you start and constantly generating loose ends? Are you trying to fit a size 16 to-do list into a size 4 schedule? That's, wherever those hotspots are, that's, I kind of, if I'm in the phase of my workshop, which is about prioritizing, you want to go for what's the most useful type of systemization that you could begin adding. And so that's, again, custom for each person. But your hotspots, your recurring dramas, you're either, if you find yourself reinventing the wheel every time you have a specific kind of client matter that you're dealing with, intake, contracts, etc., if you're constantly leaving money on the table because you don't have a system for follow-up, that's like a systems development program. If you're constantly looking at clutter and have all this self-criticism about the experience that your office provides, that means get to work on your workspace. So whatever the highlights are that are common and recurring, that's where you start. The way I work with people is to get out of cacophony mode, you have to create a business model based set of buckets or silos or categories in a way to organize those to-do lists or open items. You create that visual display, and to a person, they're like, oh, is that all there is? I can do that. It becomes manageable. calms down your mind, which is also great for improving your performance, because now you're in the moment and you're thinking using all the brain parts. So calming down your mind, eliminating the cacophony, creating a visual display, then allows you to make the wisest choices about priorities. So rather than a random selection of, oh, this seems like Etch-a-Sketch, this seems important today, and then, you move on to the next thing the next day, having a real, a solid sense of business impact, positive business impact, is where the priorities should be.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that I quite like the how you just at the end you talked about it helps you calm down your mind, because I think because lots of people look at efficiency and think, oh, it's boring, I've got to be more efficient. But I think the way you've described it in terms of, visualizing what you're doing, organizing it, looking at recurring issues, moving away from the cacophony so that your mind is calm. Because I think everyone understands the fact that if you've got a calm mind or a decluttered mind, you're going to be much more effective in terms of identifying priorities, but not just identifying those priorities, but then working on those priorities. So I think, actually, as you just said there, in terms of identifying as a starting point the recurring issues, to start saying, well, actually, can we systemize this? Because if this is something that's happening on a regular basis and we had a system for it, would be much more efficient. So, yeah, I really like the thought of calming down one's mind.
Yes. I always find that the solution is in the problem. So the persistent complaints that someone may have, how do you reverse engineer that and say, well, what's making that happen? Or what could I implement? What could I design that would make that less disruptive or more readily available? So again, whatever the specific case might be. And when you're looking at all the moving parts, there's I don't even know if they're still in business, but there was a company called 17 Hats, which was about, I'm sure, administrative support or outsourcing all kinds of jobs of founders and CEOs. And 17 hats is about right. 17 to 23 hats we're all wearing to devise the business, design the business, run the business, and grow the business. There's a lot of moving parts. And until you start to deal with them, as in address the recurrence and start to rewind and reverse engineer solutions, you will amplify, because you'll be thinking of it so many times that it seems like now the one thing is 7 things. So in your mind, there's 1,000 things to do. That's why that expression is there. But really, it's closer to 150.
So decluttering 150 things so that you get it back down to 7 things is probably quite a critical process if you want to be efficient in business, because no one's going to be efficient doing 150 different activities. So exactly. On that point,
that's why priorities are the next tier. You consolidate and prioritize, but you're able to make the wiser choices once you have everything in a visual display. Then you can compare apples to apples to apples. What's going to give me the most immediate benefit in this business, whether that be in the customer experience, revenue, office, internal administration support. What's your priority? Because efficiency is simply getting the same result with less effort.
Yeah.
That's the magic of efficiency. It just means that you're able to not have to take as many steps. You're not having to put in the effort and the work over and over again. I'm a big fan of that.
I think everybody's a big fan of it, but not everybody knows how to do it, which is obviously why we've got you on the show, to give them some key takeaways so that they actually can start to get the same result with less effort. So in terms of that, I'm a big one for metrics in everything I do, because if I'm going to do something, I want to be able to measure that it's working and measure and be able to track where I am along that timeline. So what would you say are some of the key metrics that a business should track to measure the efficiency of their systems?
Well, I'm going to apply the answer to that question to the answer I gave about the hotspots, because when you are, I work with a trust and estate attorney, and every once in a while she takes a pause, and then there's like a 3-inch pile of paper on the desk, and she's constantly losing things. And that is on two fronts, a very big time waster. And then on the other front, it is a psychological stressor. And then there's the criticism about how could you let this happen? So the self-criticism. So a metric is how much time are you able to spend, let's talk about Michael Gerber, right? On your business, in your business instead of, or on your business instead of in your business. How much time? So I, as a matter of fact, just, I use an app. Here's something, a really simple takeaway. So by the way, there was a takeaway. I just want to flag the idea of creating those business buckets for capturing your tasks and open items. It is a calming, internally organizing aspect. So there's some through lines that are very common. Finance, administration, marketing, HR, technology, customer experience. So whatever your specific buckets are, and I do have examples of that that are available through, I've currently got a How to Keep Your Desk Clear Forever ebook, which is free and downloadable on the site. And that has a link to some pretty classic business bucket models. Anyway,
Okay.
So the metrics are tracking, and let me finish my sentence. I got sidetracked myself. I just used an Outlook calendar, blank calendar, and the kind that has the time and the day, and I just started tracking what I do every day. So it's kind of like some advice for people to, when people are trying to understand where their money goes, they track it. When people want to understand where their time goes, which is one of the big components of efficiency metric, you need to be tracking what you're doing. Now, if someone says, I don't have the time to track what I'm doing, that's sort of a red flag to say that's exactly what you should be doing. Because there is an addiction to chronic overbooking, which has a first cousin called chronic avoidance, which is fueled by procrastination, which in my world is a word that people should eliminate from their vocabulary because it gives you no access to not doing things, to not doing things. So it's either procrastination or problem solving. Those are the two options. So figure out what the problem is and solve it, and so then you can do the thing. Anyway, when you're tracking your time, do that for a week and just see. And you have to be rigorous and include the distractions, the squirrels, the the extended leisure or social media time. Be honest with yourself about it, and you will see how you can improve. And here's another one that's hidden. So there's time spent, and then communication, another huge area of inefficiency. How many times do you have to interact with someone about a specific thing, whether it be scheduling an appointment, setting up an agenda? Your communication, if it's not clear and you don't have a very clear singular ask for a particular result, but you're going back and forth, and or people are prone to misunderstanding your instructions, you've got to be clearer. So you have to do that front end load of I need to ask for exactly what I want. And if you have parameters for what you want, you need to include that. If that's the kind of, recurring issue that you have, it's like, oh, I'm surrounded by idiots, which is a book, by the way, that just came out. Start looking at your own communication, whether it's email, phone, even face-to-face. If you're not being crystal clear about what you want, that is a huge waste of time, not just for yourself, but for the other person. So again, if we're looking at efficiency, it's wasting time is the opposite. We want to do same time, more results, not more time, less results. That's the antithesis of it. So it really does the metrics hinge on what problems you're solving.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And what kind of, because you just pointed out there that lots of people, when you start wanting to track your time, which obviously would make sense to me, because if you're going to try and improve something, you need to know what the baseline is and the benchmark is, and where you're spending that time, that resource, that money, before you can then start to improve. So what are some of the challenges? Because people always say, oh, I haven't got time to do X, or I haven't got time to do Y. So what are some of the challenges you see when you're trying to implement more efficient systems?
Probably number one is overcomplicating it. When you start to ruminate about a system, first of all, just the word system, people hear complexity, intricacy, or maybe tedium. So there's the mindset about it. And so there are shortcuts that happen with creating systems, which are kind of ad hoc temporary solutions. Like I see this a lot in offices, where people have the bins and the folders, and they're often quite attractive, but they have these crazy labels on them called urgent, to do, this week, top priority, things that are really meaningless. And I come in to help them, and those bins and folders are dusty. They haven't been touched since the day they were made, because they're not compelling, they're not meaningful. So that's an example of an ad hoc solution for managing the paper on your desk. Doesn't work. If you're not connecting all the parts, all the dots that are associated with this outcome you're trying to produce, because how often do people have clutter creep, where they try and do something and they do it for a while and it fails? It's because it's not really they don't do the deep dive on everything it takes. And it doesn't take a lot of work to do the deep dive. Right now, here's another takeaway that people can have. If you need a system, whether it be, let's look at it from client facing. So you sell something, you have a funnel, but you get the customer. Now what? Are you prepared with your intake, however many parts that has, onboarding, internal support? What's the workflow in the office? What's the feedback loop? What's the, how does it relate to your customer experience agenda? So intake, it could sound like, fill out this form. Well, what's the platform for the form? How are people going to do it? So really thinking through the components of what would be eventually, ultimately, maybe next week, you push a button, people get you have a pre-written template that includes the link to SurveyMonkey or something. You have or a Google form, you have your intake, you have automation in your email. Everything is set up so that it is automated. And that speaks a little bit to the technology question. And that's, I'm a boomer, Hakeem. So I'm not really super techie, but, those are things that take the steps off your plate and or can be delegated. That's efficiency. So those are obstacles when people are thinking about it. And when you're changing something, until it becomes second nature, which is the best kind of habit people can have, the automatic, I'm doing this, it's happening. You have to be really deliberate and repeat. So whether that requires a visual display in your office of here's the new protocol, here's how we do it around here now, whatever structures you need to put in to remind you, because forgetting is like probably one of the frontline enemies of change. So, those are obstacles, challenges, and I think I sort of am putting them in the mental or mindset kind of category. But I think I trust if you needed to create a system, when you got past your resistance and just sat down and spent some time drafting, which was the takeaway I'm giving people, just draft. Business is all iteration. So it is not about perfection. This is about getting a draft of a process with all the things you can think of, and then return to it the next day. Run it by other people, run it by the team, and really just begin to put the meat on the bones of a process, and it's done. And then it becomes a dynamic, interactive document that when the next time you have an intake situation and you get a little pushback or feedback that something doesn't work, voila, you pull out the protocol, you update it. You've got continuous improvement because now you have a foundational component for a feedback loop.
And how do you do that without disrupting your current operations? Because that's and again another one that people are worried about. Okay, if I'm now going to start drafting processes, tracking stuff in my diary, putting things into buckets, changing the way I was doing it before, the inevitable view is that they think, well, that's going to make me less efficient for a period of time until I get all these systems up and running and I've got to get everybody else on board. So have you got any strategies to help how you do that without disrupting what you're currently doing or the business as usual stuff?
Well, I think the breakfast of champions is the project plan. And here's what I love about the project plan. It takes a morass of tasks and by the way, start with free association. Just as I just said, just write anything you can think of, write it down. It doesn't have to be in the order in which it occurs. Just get all the pieces written down, typed up, dictated, whatever it might be. And then you can go back and create the sequence. But I promise you, if you do that with regard to any sort of system or standard operating procedure, when you are going through that process, you will start connecting dots that really weren't available to you as you were just resisting it or thinking about it instead of just initiating that draft. So you do that, and I call it making some baby elephants. It's the difference between all or nothing, which I think is what you're alluding to, which is worst case, absolutely, college term paper approach to getting things done as a business owner. It doesn't really work. So if you have a project with line items that are in a sequence, you can pop those in 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and you can make progress and move the ball up the court every single week. And I'm telling you, there's nothing as calming as making progress. Knowing that you have done some portion of time, and especially if you have a project plan, because now you know exactly where you are in the whole project. Some projects may have a hardwired deadline. So, and that's catching up is really one of the most important things you could do. The backlog is what kills people with scheduling. So catching up, but understanding that is going to take time. But again, being deliberate intentional, creating placeholders that are non-negotiable to build your business, to calm your experience, to clear the runway for your personal best. It's like one of the most important things you can do. Invest that front end load. Draft things.
Yeah,
Run it by other
kind of
people.
like kind of like that analogy of boiling a frog, isn't it? That obviously you can drop the frog into boiling water and it jumps right out. That's the all approach. Or you can put it in cold water and start turning the temperature up. So that's the progress approach, where you're doing slowly but surely, and then people don't actually feel the sense of overwhelm, and it remains or keeps them calm throughout the process, but they're moving forward and progressing every step of the way.
Yeah. And you make a good point, which is about, one of my game-changing books is Kaizen. One small step can change your life. And it's about how to use even the small. So foundation is the project plan. You need to spend probably an astonishingly small amount of time in a draft. Then creating the sequence, then taking a step or two. It becomes its own sense of motivation, and it doesn't disrupt your week, because you don't have to track your time. If you feel like you waste a lot of time and you really want to know, you track your time. Otherwise, I have people create what I call a rapid prototype of your ideal week, which is a way to predetermine what you're doing, make even little things. Like, for example, with my trust and estate attorney, we reorganized and gave very specific and discrete and isolated and smaller number of opportunities for client meetings. So for a week, instead that were predetermined what times, instead of 6 random meetings that can be an interruption because you want to take care of your client. So that's a system. Create a placeholder, a block of time for the process of developing a system. There's another component of that, which is the resistance and the procrastination. When you see it, it's like, I don't have time for that right now, which is why I use the phrase non-negotiable. But there's also, in my work, I take people through an ownership exercise. It's a way to short circuit procrastination, minimize procrastination, because you want to be able to be connected to the purpose and value of any given task on your list. If you notice that the same ones, or that you've got a lot of lingering, languishing kind of things that have been out there for a long time, you either got to get rid of it or get to the bottom of why you're not doing it and solve the problem. So you can have a project plan. You can create the baby elephants. You can contain your priorities. What can you really get accomplished in the next week or two? That's a priority. Not, all plural, when I have time. Priority really has the quality of, you're going to have to make trade-offs to accomplish that priority. So do the trade-offs and you will get the result. You got to own the result. You got to want the result. Be committed to the result. And you just dovetail it into your calendar. It's not all or nothing. I'm against all or nothing.
Okay. So in terms of the desired result, there's obviously a variety of desired results, but obviously listeners and viewers here will be thinking, right, so it's great, I'm improving my systems. What's that actually going to give me? How's that going to improve my bottom line, for example? Because that's what everyone's looking at. So I'm going to have a more efficient system. What why or how is that going to lead to an improved bottom line for me to put all the effort in to help to make sure I achieve that?
Yeah, well, when a customer or potential customer has the experience of you being able to work quickly, you're consistent, you're in communication, you're professional. When they have that sense of certainty, that builds trust. That can move into, it's more engagement. It's raving fans. When you think about the opposite, if you are, always late, if your work is incomplete, if you're not prepared for conversations or meetings, you are eroding trust. So it's an investment in the customer experience side that has them more likely to buy from you. They're impressed. They like your style. They are confident in you. Then they will more likely buy from you. Plus, on the other side of whatever it is that you're selling, they have that 5-star rating for you. That means raving fan. That means talking to people about what you do. That means a relationship is built also, because that's really vital, that you cultivate a deeper relationship with your clients going forward. It means more broader repertoire, more ability to engage and ask for things or communicate. So that's how it improves your bottom line.
Yeah. So
And your life, by the way, and your business life, by the way.
Well, yeah, because obviously I would assume that if you've got more efficient systems, as we were saying, it's doing more, or at least the same, with less. So you're going to have more time, which obviously then improves it should improve your business life if you're using it wisely, and it should improve your life as a whole because you've got more time to do other things. But I like that, just bringing it to the point, because I was speaking to my wife actually this morning. She's in customer experience, and we were having a discussion about the fact that so many companies don't really focus on the customer experience. There's lots of things they focus on. They focus on product development. They focus on actually selling the product or the marketing. But I think, as you just outlined there, if you get the customer experience right, you are going to get ratings. You are going to get raving fans. You are going to get people to refer, i.e. ratings. And that a lot of that can come from being more efficient. Because you, as you just said, you are going to be quicker, you're going to be more consistent. That leads to trust. You're going to get more engagement, etc. And if you're not, or if you haven't got efficient systems, that is where people get frustrated because your onboarding process isn't right, or even your follow-up process isn't right. So that's what I'm always trying to get across to people. Efficiency isn't boring; it's necessary. Efficiency actually makes the wheels of business go around, and will definitely increase your bottom line if you're an efficient business. So that's usefully articulated, I think.
Yeah. And I think the other component is, as we're talking about this, I realized that when you are providing that exemplary customer experience, you feel good about yourself. I mean, that's what you're in business to do. So that makes you more confident. That gives you more energy. That makes it easier to go out and talk to people about what you do. So it's very circular. It's a great feedback loop that is just, I know when people like what I do, I couldn't be happier. That's, it's so satisfying and so enriching. And so it's a confidence builder or maintainer, whatever state that you're in. But it's worthwhile. I mean, why would you not want to do that? Unless you're so
exactly.
remote, like not really attached. You're selling, Java Moss on Amazon or something. That's a completely different thing. But if you're a service-based business owner, that's a critical component of your business success.
And we were talking about some of the challenges before, and what I've seen when I've worked with businesses, especially the innovative businesses who are busy being innovative and creative, and that's what they're all about. And then you start talking about systems and efficiency, and it's like, oh no, we don't do that. We're really about innovation. So how do you balance
Yeah.
those two things together?
Well, first of all, it doesn't have to be, some pristine, sterile environment. It can have the stimulating elements in there. It could have a little bit of crazy. I've had people say, I'm just creative. I don't like that. Well, I've worked with creative people, and what creative people do who have a commitment to systems is they devise a name for the buckets. I am the goddess of customer experience, or my community, I call them snap, crackle, pop. There's ways to position in your creative and innovative mind the categories or the context of your approach. For the most part, when you are clutter-free in the workspace, when you have your structures in place, when you have at least a modicum of schedule for a little, just for some stability, to whatever degree you're comfortable with, then it really has cleared the runway for your personal performance. I'm not going to solve problems people don't have. Sometimes they're not aware they have the problem. They compare themselves to Einstein, who always had the cluttered desk, but I don't see them, discovering the atom or anything like that. So I'm not sure it's a good comparison. But you solve the problems that don't work for you as an innovator or creative person. And oftentimes, people who, when you've got a lot of clutter, you either have to shut down a certain part of yourself, put on the blinders, which is not good for creativity, or some people are just not comfortable in a really antiseptic kind of environment or highly structured process. But you got to look at your business model. If everything's working, don't fix it. If it needs some tune-ups, and I circle back to one of those original questions you asked, which is, what are the flare-ups? What are the hot spots, if any? What's recurring? What are you always dealing with that you're just complaining about or sick of? And if you're an innovator and creative person and you're losing things, maybe you go the basics and make sure you have a home for certain classes of tools that you use.
And does that, just listen to what you're saying there, does that, and you've used different terminologies in terms of hotspots, the pinch points, buckets, etc. And is that a better way? Because I think as soon as you mention the word systems, people automatically think of that antiseptic environment where I'm now going to be put into a straitjacket. Do you have other terms that you use that you would say, right, rather than you, especially if you're in an innovative business, systems actually is very effective in the healthcare, where I work, because people get it and understand it. But in a more innovative place, do you use different terminology than systems that could potentially aid the uptake of it?
I have called them experiments. Let's clear the desk. Let's create the home. Let's set up, like I have one woman who's an author, and it was a mess. Everything from all these cork boards with, undiscernible note themes and whatever, and then a desk just filled with paperwork and equipment and clutter all over the place. And we organized everything, and then we set up a filing system that was color coded and staggered. So the tabs for finance and admin and customers and marketing were all sort of staggered, but together in colored items. She must have stared at that for 20 minutes. She took pictures. She was, oh, it's so nice. It's so beautiful. And, she just so appreciated it. And so I conduct an experiment. Let's get to the other side. You can mess it up if you want to, but let's start here with what are the groups of things. So simply grouping like items together is a game changer. That's why I'm said several times, let's get your business model buckets so you have groups of items. Listen, if you have haystacks of paper all over your office, imagine if each haystack was just a specific category. This was administration. I know that's a little bit messy, or marketing or finance. At least you're now able to minimize the looking for things because you know what group it is and where that group lives. I don't recommend that. I mean, I say set up a filing system, for God's sake. But if you want to take an incremental step like that and understand that it's a linear, organized, astonishingly simple solution to tackling a big, your office, your administration, your schedule, grouping like items.
And just on that, because I know you said right at the outset you're not into technology, you're a boomer. Are there things or technology that you've seen or that you've used yourself that actually can accelerate that efficiency streamlining process?
For me, so I use Google Sheets and Google Drive. And I have a whole matching structure, digital information process that I offer, which I'm rolling out soon. But here's the beauty of the most important tool that you have and I have and everyone listening has is your thinking.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about it? So I say I had a few slides for my systems. And the first big slide is what matters most for creating efficient business systems. Your business model and how you think about it. So creating the categories of your business model. I have a couple of different functional views, but one is that people find really useful. There's the customer journey as a business model. What are the components of that? Your offers, your back office preparation, your promotion, your fulfillment. Then what are the client-facing related functions? Payment, finance, HR, legal, technology. And then internal support, administration, contracts, professional development. So these are ways to group activities rather than cacophony. So it's a way to consolidate what there is to do. And it calms down your mind and it gives you access to true priorities. I'm sorry. I think I lost track of your question. What was that?
Yeah, the question. Yeah, it was about which I think you've answered actually. It's about how you can use technology and what system you use. So you're talking about Google Drive. You're talking about a digital product that you're about to release. And I think that's quite useful because I think people get very lost in paper, sticky pads, notes, which you can still do, and obviously still are very effective. But now there's probably digital products, yours being one, where actually you can start doing things probably more quickly and probably easier to find, easier to search for stuff when you're looking for it, which just makes it a bit more efficient.
Yeah.
So I think you answered that question.
Yeah, well, I had some other notes about technology in general, and I think that it's a very custom situation. So there's many businesses that have a lot of sales funnel technology, landing pages, website, all kinds of components of their funnel. So that's a custom experience or custom requirement. So you have to look at your business model and see, where would technology benefit you? But then two questions about that is, will it increase your bottom line? And do you have the time for the learning curve?
Yeah.
So
Indeed.
often people get, because marketing is so good. So people get really excited. This is going to solve my problem, whether it's Monday or Slack or, any of these, Asana, all these project management programs and efficiency structures and a million CRM products. So they're all fantastic, but they really do have different features for different problems and different solutions. So many people get excited and they buy these things, but I have a philosophy about, the Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men. You can't handle the tools. You can't handle the tools. You've got to get your head on straight first. You have to be very clear about what results you want to produce, so you know what features to buy. You have to be able to plan on spending time and maybe throwing some pens out the window, just like frustration mode, whatever it is. So technology is, I just like to keep it simple. If I have a Google sheet that can organize the thinking with a little, customization on my part so that I have standard templates for things, that's it. You don't need to be super high tech unless you do. But if you need to be super high tech, you've probably got a support structure, staff, outsourced experts, etc., that can move you through that learning curve or do it for you. So that's yeah.
I was just going to say, and you're right, because it's about getting tools that work for you, not getting tools just for the sake of getting tools, which I think lots of people have been guilty of. And then, you have 15 tools which you're paying for that you're not actually using, or somebody's using but not very efficiently, and then you start cancelling subscriptions and you just wasted a whole lot of time because you've had a good sales pitch and it looks like it's great. So I definitely agree with you, and I like the you can't handle the tools. So
it's like garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have the material and the process, the tool is not going to work for you.
And it would appear to me that people often think, well, okay, so that's easy. Well, easy-ish in a small business. You've got a couple of people in the business. You've gone in, you start to get that process right. So you've got rid of the cacophony, but then you start getting more and more people in place. How do you maintain those systems and that efficiency as you start to grow and you want to scale your business?
Well, when you're, I talked about a little bit at the beginning, which is growing your business. If you have a foundation of baseline documentation, it's not like, so who's the guy? Lean Startup, Eric Rice. Business is iteration. You design something and it evolves and improves. And so does the baseline foundation of systems. So when you are creating intake, now, so here's some more little pieces of technology. So now I have Acuity, calendar. and I collected the basic information, and then somebody sent me a Acuity calendar, schedule, and her intake questions were, remind me where we met. Just a variety of things that are so interesting and so valuable, so that you're not needing to do the mental gymnastics to remember all of it. So that's an upgrade, but I have the system already, and I have my basic intake questions. So now all I have to do is go to Acuity, add my questions, and boom, it's done. So when you have your baseline of documentation, fundamental technology, processes, you can map those on to new versions of what you're creating, or you can expand on them, but there'll always be some sort of useful reference as your business grows. What did we used to do when we first started offering this, or what was that, version 3.0? How did we talk about it that way? So you have a history of documentation and upgrades. So anytime you create a baseline documentation and review it regularly, it becomes a dynamic, upgradable, forever structure that you can use in your business.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then I can't believe the time, actually. It's virtually an hour up already. So what I always like to finish on is examples and key takeaways, etc. So can you give us some examples of businesses that you've seen, worked with, or that you know of that actually have grown by improving their systems?
Yes, variety of examples with some interesting twists. But so the trust and estate attorney that I spoke about, we did a combination of all the three operational areas, which are daily interactions. So her schedule, her systems, and her office, her workspace. So we organized that workspace. And I think I mentioned that all the rules to clear your desk forever. It's exactly what I do with private clients. They can download it on my website, but I talk about the three types of paper. So on deck, which is what you're working on right now, that's all that should be on or near your desk. Then you've got your archive system, which makes it easy to file and easy to find. That's the most important part. And then a reference area if you use something like that. So once you have that, it sort of doubles as a workflow structure. So instantly the visual cues are orderly, clean. My priorities are right there waiting for me on my desk. Then systems for how she interacts with her clients, protocols, intake, with her administrative assistant, setting up weekly meetings, how to deal with the staff. Then schedule. As I mentioned, we created those blocks of predictable, contained client meetings that just allowed her to be free to schedule her buffers and her catch-up day and her client matter work. And then she created a game of X amount of dollars a month revenue, billable time, which is the attorney's, that's their holy grail. And she literally doubled her revenue. She was a partner already, but she became like the third highest revenue person just by having that structure, being able to come in, get to work, compartmentalize her calendar so that she could include maintenance, catching up, client meetings, buffers, and the actual material deliverables for her job. So I think that is pretty amazing. I mean, she showed me emails from the company. They were just amazed. Then I have a multipreneur, I call him, someone I was coaching for quite a while. And we started with his office. And by the way, I really think if you've got a cluttered office, it's probably the best place to start. Get those, instead of walking into an office full of squirrels, you can walk into a supportive resource for getting your work done. So we started with his workspace, and he was someone over the years that I coached him who kept dipping his toe into different kinds of work to do. And he was like a reseller of things, and he did PR work and just all kinds of things. And eventually I fired him because he wasn't really doing what he said he would do. He actually was dishonest with me about doing the work. So at a certain point I said, I don't think I'm the guy for you. Anyway, we remained friends. And he, because of that clarity and clean space, it almost became like a sanctuary, his office. And he was able to deep dive into what he really wanted to do. And he is now kind of almost a spiritual advisor to people. And he's got a thriving business going for a few years now. And it just took that whole experience, and he did some beautiful upgrades, and it just changed his life, and he was able to settle down and really think. And I call that creativity and innovation. Right?
So I think that's, it is. And they're two really good examples and a perfect place on which to finish, I think, because we've gone through the whole process of what efficiency is, what steps you need to take to get efficiency, how to bring it into a business. And I think that's really nice, because those are two very different examples, because in the first example, it's about just doubling your growth. It's about revenue, pure revenue, which obviously lots of business owners want to do. So if you don't listen to anything else, if you listen to what Kathleen has said and you go through a program, you're going to be able to double your growth. So that's obviously very beneficial. But then the second example is more one about personal growth, isn't it? It's about, if you have clarity, you can then develop and understand what your purpose is, which leads to happiness, healthiness, and if you're doing, which they always say, if you get a purpose, in this case, it's a spiritual purpose, but if you get a purpose and you focus and drive that purpose forward, then you turn that into a business, you're much more likely to be much more effective in your business, because you're doing something that you feel you have a purpose for. So I think they're really, really good examples. So I really appreciate those two different sides of a similar coin. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been I've really enjoyed it, because I love talking about systems and getting ideas about how to put systems into a business. So just tell us, because we'll drop these links into the podcast description. If people listen to this, which I know they will, and they want to get in contact with you and find more about how they can drive the system, where do they contact you? What's the best way for them to start?
Well, the website is 5 out of 5. So I like to flash my card, which I had done before the pandemic and didn't get to hand a lot out. So it's 5out of5.com, and you can see the programs and the workshops. And ironically, my systems workshop is not available yet. I'll be rolling that out in December. But again, you see that everything is a system. And you can download the ebook. And I'm also offering a webinar on the 31st about how to build calm and efficiency into your daily operations. So that is something that people can sign up for. It's a free 90-minute webinar on this topic, but probably with a bit more focus on the calm part.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Kathleen. All those links and all those contact details will be in the podcast description. So thank you very much. And I appreciate your time. Don't you just love it when you have an episode has clear, actionable takeaways? And I know all of mine do. But if you didn't think before this episode that you needed systems and you need to implement those systems to get business growth, just take the example that Kathleen gave at the end, where she talked about putting systems in place, which led to doubling of sales for that lawyer. And the key takeaways for me are really about putting things in buckets, decluttering your mind, having clarity of thought, and ensuring that you know how many hats you need to wear.
And don't forget to check out the show notes at www.thesalesaccelerationformula.com. And as always, subscribe, like, and share with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who you think may be interested. But most of all, keep the feedback coming so that we can continue to improve and give you more of what you like. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and as I always do. Keep listening and keep growing.